I am celebrating 100,000 podcast downloads. And it's right on time because I have been doing live podcast recordings inside of this Facebook group. And I just realized this yesterday that we had 100,000 podcast downloads in the podcast. And this is such a big deal. So how many of you have a podcast of your own? I would love to know inside of the comments, how many of you have your own podcast? Put a yes in the comments if you do, whether you're live or watching the replay. Our podcast, the Freedom Queen podcast, has been a secret weapon of mine that I have used for years. And it is something that has allowed me to have my highest cash months ever. And so it'll be really helpful for me if I know who is here that has a podcast or you're watching the replay, so I can gear this mini training for you. Okay, Kayla has a podcast, Lois has a podcast, incredible. So the first thing I wanna say is before I go into this training, I'm gonna be doing a giveaway inside of this Facebook group, and one of you is going to win these glasses. You're gonna win these glasses with the iconic gold chain that goes around them. They're beautiful. Oops. Everyone is wearing them inside of their content and in their marketing. One of you is going to win these. And the way to win this is by writing a review of the Freedom Queen podcast on any platform. So if you write it on Google, amazing. If you write it on Spotify, amazing. On Apple, amazing. Write a review of the Freedom Queen podcast and make it genuine. Make it like you actually mean this about yourself. And you mean this about the podcast. You love the podcast. It's not just something you're saying to win. Take a screenshot of it, and inside of the Facebook group, you're gonna see a thread. And the thread is the podcast Freedom Queen Iconic Glasses giveaway. And you're just gonna take a screenshot, post it there, and Team Freedom Queen will, on Saturday, we are going to do a pool. So this Saturday, we're gonna do a pool and one person's going to win. So if you write a review on Spotify, on Apple, on multiple channels, that counts as multiple entries. So just write a review and one person's gonna be selected on Saturday to get these, and we deliver around the world. I have clients in China. Like, I can get things to anyone. I'm a Freedom Queen, okay? We deliver all over the world. So one person, write an amazing review on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever, and one person is going to win. So I'm going to actually hold on to these because I might put them back on. So our podcast has been something that has brought in so much revenue into the Freedom Queen company. So much. And I need to tell you its origin story because it really matters, and it's one of the things that gets a lot of people tripped up when it comes to podcasting. This is one of the reasons why most people don't make money from their podcast. Did you know that most podcasts started, most people fail? They literally quit their podcast episodes, like they stop. Most podcasts quit. The people that start them, they end up not doing them anymore. They quit. And I'm gonna walk you through some of the reasons I believe that this is why, and also some of the reasons why people just don't make money from their podcasts as well. And if you're live with me, say hello because I'm looking at the comment section. So in 2022, by the way, let me move this up. There we go. In 2022, I was in the Dominican Republic. It was January. I was in the DR. Robbie and I were there for we were living there. I was gonna say a holiday, but we were just living there because that's what we do. And Robbie at that time was doing some info marketing. And Robbie said to me, I'm going to start a podcast. And I said, well, that sounds like a really fun idea. I'm gonna do that too. And I said, well, where are you housing it? He's like, there's this site called Buzzsprout. It's like $12 a month. I'm like, okay, I can do that, $12 a month, like, all right. So I ask myself, well, what am I gonna name the podcast? And I say, I'm gonna name it the Business Coaching Podcast because that's what I do. And nobody really knew Freedom Queen at the time, even though it existed. But I just wanted to call it the Business Coaching Podcast because people didn't know the name Freedom Queen. You know when somebody, like, at the beginning, they don't know your name, so it wouldn't have made sense for me to be like Bridget James Ling, because at that time, no one knew Bridget James Ling. Now everyone knows. They know Freedom Queen. And so at that time, I was like, this sounds like fun. I'm gonna launch this podcast. I'm gonna get it out into the world, and it's gonna be amazing. And I started with my first episode. Now, I have 2 cell phones. You're gonna laugh at me. I have 2 cell phones, and I do it for different purposes of just CEO stuff. And on my phone, because I didn't have a fancy podcast studio, I didn't have a podcast mic, I didn't have a great camera, I had a MacBook, but I didn't have a lot. And all I had on my iPhone at the time was the voice memo app. And what I would do is I would just go into my phone and I would press record, just like this, press record, and I would start recording podcast episodes. And I would say, welcome back to the Business Coaching Podcast, because I had seen other people, they had these really fancy intros and outros. It was like, welcome to the podcast with your host. And I was like, I don't know how to create that, but what I do know how to do is speak to move people. What I do know how to do is using my essence, my influence, my personal power, my magnetism to move people, right? This is Freedom Queen. You want to build a movement, you need to move people, you need to be the woman that moves. And so I just started recording episodes, and you couldn't stop me. I was like recording all the time. I would record on my walks. How many of you have listened to the Freedom Queen podcast and you hear the cars passing by, you hear the trucks, you're listening in, and you hear the birds in the background? And so I didn't have like this fancy setup, and sometimes the quality of the microphone wasn't that good because I was too close to it. I would get really excited and I would be like, you need to listen to this. So what I had though was the ability to speak to move people. And now in Freedom Queen, the way that I teach you how to build a high-end movement is that your business is always going to be compounding. So at the time, I couldn't see the payoff immediately, but I knew that it was going to pay off in a really big way. I didn't have an editor. To this day, I don't have a podcast editor. I don't have an intro and an outro. I don't have some fancy schmancy intro, outro, and yet my work is timeless. It's superb. I don't have ads interjecting in between my podcast. I don't have a podcast studio, and yet I get incredible. We just had Lori Harder on our podcast. I just had Russell Brunson on the podcast. I've had other people in the industry on my podcast. And next week, I might be flying out to a disclosed location to have someone on the podcast. And there's something in common with every single high cash month that I have. Something else also happens in the podcast. I have my highest downloads. It's either the same month or the month right before that, highest downloads. And there's something about this. Also, I see some of you just tuning in. If you're live with me, say hello, or watching the replay. There's something really about this that's very important. Why is it that the highest download months are also my highest cash months, or right after? It's because when you're doing long form content, someone is able to fall in love with you in a much deeper way. When you do long form content, people are able to fall in love with your heart. In a 7-second B-roll clip, that's not gonna happen. In a boring carousel, which that's just a whole other subject, that's not gonna happen. But in your podcasts, you have the opportunity to go deep with people. When someone listens to your podcast, also Paul's, hi Janae, I was thinking of you recently, I'm so happy you're here. Linda's live, Grazina's live, incredible. Lola says 100%, yes. So think about it this way. When you're listening to the Freedom Queen podcast, you might have me in your car with your kids. This is why I don't curse I don't curse in general, but like maybe your kids are listening. Maybe you're out working out. Maybe you're going for a walk with the dog. Maybe you're in the shower and you're naked, right? Maybe you're cooking dinner. Maybe you're working. We have a deeper relationship together as a Freedom Queen listener than my other people do. And there's something about this that I really, I just know that the right person that watches this training that really takes this to heart is gonna really expand in 2025. Because in 2022, I actually stopped doing so many live free masterclasses. And I really put a big emphasis on my podcast. And I went from doing 100K in a year to 680K the next year. That's a really big jump. And it felt like actually I was doing it easier because the podcast serves as a way to nurture your audience even when you're not live on a masterclass. But I started to really realize this. I'm like, this is working. I'm getting higher downloads and my income is also increasing. Then the math is mathing. The numbers are numbering. Like things are working. So then the next year I put an even bigger emphasis on it. And my podcast, the way that I set this up again, was just voice memos on my iPhone. Buzzsprout for $12 a month. I made it the most basic name. I don't have transcriptions. I never did descriptions in it. I just gave it a title that I felt like, oh, that's a good title. And I published and 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 published my heart out till we have 100,000 downloads to this day. I didn't do a launch. I know people that I have helped map out an entire podcast launch with them. Like I've helped them build out an entire podcast launch who don't use their podcast anymore. And I'm like, well, your problem was never the podcast launch. Your problem was your ability to move. Your problem was your ability to lead people and lead yourself. And so I have one of the top performing podcasts with the least tech stuff included in it and make the most from it because I lead and move. And so I'm going to talk with you about how to expand your podcast and how to get it to make more reach. And by the way, we're doing a giveaway starting today and it goes until Saturday. One person will be selected to win and you're going to win these absolutely gorgeous glasses. We do ship around the world, so no matter where you're at, you're going to get them. They are amazing. Everybody has them. Maybe I'll wear them for a little bit. And you're gonna get the gold chain and it says Freedom Queen on the side. The way to enter is to write a review, screenshot it, and you're gonna put it on the giveaway thread that will be posted in the Facebook group after this. So I wanna talk with you about growing your podcast. Put a yes in the chat if you want to grow your podcast. If you wanna use your podcast to make more money. So every single quarter, what I do is a podcast challenge. And we're entering into one. We're actually kind of in one right now. Every single quarter, I do a podcast challenge. And inside of these podcast challenges, it's so simple. I don't overcomplicate it. Simple scales, complex fails. All you do is for a certain amount of time, let's say 14 days or 30 days, I would not do it any more than 30 days. inside of your podcast for that amount of time, you are going to publish podcast episodes more than you normally would. Why? Because the more episodes you make, the more downloads you're going to get, period. You're gonna have more downloads the more episodes that you produce. So you're either going to batch your episodes and schedule them to go out, or you are going to make them as you go, but you just have to be responsible for uploading them to the processor or whatever the platform is that you're using. So over the course of that time frame, you are going to do a challenge with your listeners. Now, if you don't have a big audience, what I want you to do is I want you to leverage your social media channels. So if you don't have a lot of listeners, this applies to you. If you have a lot of listeners, this doesn't really apply to you, but you can also leverage it. So what you're gonna do is on your social media account, you're gonna tell them, I'm doing a podcast challenge. So I would say I'm doing a Freedom Queen podcast challenge. And over the course of the next 30 days, I'm gonna be walking you through, or I'm gonna be talking about these core topics on the podcast. This is what we're gonna be talking about, these core topics. And I want you to plug in every single day into the podcast. Now, throughout the course of the 30 days, we are going to have a challenge. And all you have to do is, and then you want to walk them through the different structures of your challenge. This can be, you're going to incentivize shares to their Instagram stories. You're going to incentivize reviews. You're going to incentivize them sharing it to their communities. You're going to just incentivize them to listen to the podcast, right? So I just gave you a couple different ways. I have found our sweet spot. So for example, when I first started doing these challenges, I used to do it where when you share an episode to your Instagram stories and tag me, you screenshot it, you post it to the Facebook thread, you get entered to win something. I don't like doing that one anymore, mostly because if I was a listener to a podcast, I probably wouldn't share it to my Instagram stories. I won't. Like if I listen to someone's podcast, I won't share it to my Instagram stories. So I don't do that one anymore, but what I do, however, is reviews, and I incentivize listens. The other thing that I've done is if you share it to your email list, if you share it to your broadcast channel, if you share it to your Facebook group, you are going to get something special. You know, I've done it before where it's like point system. When you share to your story, it's 1 point. When you share a review, it's 5 points. When you share it to your email list, it's 10 points. And so you have a thread where people can submit their entries, and then you can, at the end of the month, put all the names into a hat and then pick out the winners. Okay, are you picking up what I'm putting down? Put a yes in the chat if you are. Marie's here. Hi, Marie. Dr. Alicia's here. Yes, amazing. Samaria's here as well. Incredible. So I do this about once a quarter, but I have done it like once a month. So it's really, really easy to run. So if you don't have a lot of listeners on your podcast, what I recommend you do is share it on your social media platforms. Now, if you do have a lot of listeners, you don't need to share it, which is why I call it a back-end lead gen strategy. You don't need to share it on your social media so much. You can just share it on the podcast. This is what I do a lot. And so if you're an avid listener, you would know sometimes I'm constantly running these secret or behind the scenes challenges just on the podcast. Nobody knows about them. Laura says, listen to your new episode yesterday. It was so good. I'm so happy, Laura. And so we do these like secret challenges on the podcast just to our listeners. Now, this is great to use when you have a bought-in podcast listener base. If you don't have that, then we need to deploy other channels in order to get more people to be bought into what it is that you're doing on your podcast. You picking out what I'm putting down here, you got that? And so I run these about once a quarter, but again, sometimes I'll run them once a month. And this heavily brings in and incentivizes people to listen to Freedom Queen, and a lot of my podcast listeners become high ticket buyers. Because what I'm doing on my podcast is I'm not making episodes for anyone. I make episodes on the Freedom Queen podcast for my highest paying buyers. So I don't just go in and record any old thing that I think I want to record and talk about. I'm only recording episodes and treating my podcast like my highest paying buyer is listening. And when you do this, she feels so seen and so heard by you, so that when you go to make an offer, she's so much more likely to buy, right? Is she more likely to buy? Yes or no? Yes. She's so much more likely to buy. Because it's like her one place where she can plug into you and hear your voice and get to know you. And so what do I talk about on the Freedom Queen podcast? Why does this work so well? The first thing I do on the Freedom Queen podcast that makes it different is that I tell stories that I know my dream buyer would love to hear. I had one of my clients come on. We did a VIP weekend in Paris, at the Ritz in Paris in October, and I had her on the podcast, and all we did was tell stories about the weekend. When I took my mom to Florence and we stayed at the St. Regis and I surprised her with this beautiful suite, I had her come on and we just told stories about our week together. We went to France and then we went to Florence. I tell stories about taking my clients to Dior. I tell stories about when I got engaged on stage at Freedom Queen Live. I tell stories about Freedom Queen Live and the hurricane and rescheduling it. And I tell stories about my first $1 million month. And I tell stories about how I had a 100K day. So I'm telling a lot of stories, and stories are so powerful because stories really create massive depth with your people. You know, the best leaders are the best storytellers. It is Easter this week coming up, and it was just Passover, and it's funny, my fiance always says to me, he's like, Jesus, if you asked him a question, he would never answer with a step-by-step strategy. He would teach you in a parable. Like, the most powerful people teach in stories. When I started this live, what did I start with? A story. I started off with, here's how I started the podcast. And so stories stick in people's heads. If you remember a story from the podcast, or you remember a story of Freedom Queen, put it inside of the comment section. I would love to know what your story is that you remember seeing, because stories stick and that makes people stay. Let me pull up so I can see you all again. And so when I'm making episodes, I'm telling stories about my life, about my journey, and all of the stories that I share are relevant to my dream buyer, right? I'm not telling stories that my dream buyer wouldn't care about. And then the second thing I'm doing is I'm creating hyper nuanced episodes that only my dream buyer would understand. So for example, I made an episode that was how to sell a $10,000 a month package. Not all of my clients want to sell $10,000 a month packages. If you want to sell that, put a yes in the comment section. I would love to know. But not everybody does. Yeah, so is this an Italian name? I need to know. Your mom's story that you were going to shine. Yes, it's a story, right? It's something that you feel bought into. It moves people. Hi, Samaya. Yes, we remember the stories. So the second piece is that I tell very nuanced, specific pieces of content that only my dream buyer could relate to. Yeah, Sumaya wants to charge 10K a month, Laura wants to charge 10K a month. Not all of my buyers want to charge 10K a month, and I know this. That's fine. But the people that do, they're gonna listen to that, and they're also gonna pay to join my highest ticket coaching. Another great story, how I sell $40,000 VIP weekends, how I sell $120,000 packages, how I sell out my retreats, how I have built the business, how I hold 50 people in one space, how I hold and bring in 100 people, my mindset behind going to $300,000 cash months, right? So all of these things are hyper nuanced to my dream buyer. They're not related to everyone. They're literally not gonna be relatable. I have zero desire in being relatable to people. I was just talking about this in one of my masterminds with women that are going to multi-six-figure cash months. I have no desire to be relatable because my dream buyer, she's like, I don't want to be relatable either. She's not relatable. So I make content that's not relatable to other people, but only relates to her. Samari says, a skiing story I remember from early on. I believe you've spoken at Freedom Queen Live. I remember you thinking at every level there is fear we must face and move through it. Yes, the story of New York Lights, you sleeping in the air mattress. Yes, I talk about, I unrolled the twin bed mattress and I lined my mattress with twinkle lights and Christmas lights. And I laid there and fell asleep and had a turkey sandwich the next day or a ham sandwich the next day. And that's all I had. And $500, one suitcase and an air mattress, and a heart and soul full of big dreams. And so these stories hit my dream customer, the woman that I could mentor the best in her soul. And not only that, but also the topics that I'm talking about are only relevant to her. So is she gonna buy more or less? If she feels like she belongs, well, she's gonna buy the most. She's gonna buy more. And so on these podcast episodes, a question that I get asked a lot is, do you do a lot of call to actions? And the answer is no. No, I don't do a lot of call to actions, and this is actually why I talk about this inside of the I Get Paid to Exist program, why a lot of people just message me to hire me, or a lot of people just message the team and they say, I'm in, I want to be a part of this offer. I don't even have to do a call to action. I don't have to say, now DM me to join the mastermind, because I provide such high level value on my podcast that people just through reciprocity go, this is genius, I need to pay her. They get so much value out of the podcast that they go, imagine what it would be like if I worked with her. And I think what's so fascinating about this is that when I started this podcast and I was in that small room, Robbie and I had this like condo at the top of this 3-bedroom house in the Dominican Republic. And actually, it's quite a funny story of how we ended up in this. It was called a penthouse, but it was not a penthouse. But Robbie, for Christmas that year prior, surprised me with flights. And he didn't tell me where we were going. I didn't know where we were flying to. And so on the day after Christmas, we fly to an undisclosed area. And literally I have like my eyes closed. I'm on the plane. I am putting, closing my ears. Like I don't want to hear where we're flying to. At that time, I only had one suitcase. So I had all my stuff with me. That's all that I traveled with. I didn't know where we were flying to. And I'm on the flight again. I'm not looking at the signs. I don't look at the ticket. I don't know how we got away with this, but I also didn't want to find out. Like I love finding out a good surprise. Like I wanted to experience the surprise. I didn't want to ruin it. And so anyways, when we land in the Dominican Republic, I find out we're in the DR through overhearing it over the loudspeaker. And we get to this Airbnb, and it is not somewhere that we would stay. And at that time, we were not like we are today. We were more like backpackers style. Like we were more running around in our bikinis. Well, I was in my bikini, not Robbie. And we're having the time of our lives, but we were like, we are not staying here. So we leave and we book another Airbnb and we get a taxi to it. Now it's like 7 p.m. at night. The sun has gone down. It's so dark out. It's getting a little sketchy in the DR. And we arrive at the new hotel place, and the new hotel is like, this Airbnb doesn't exist. And we had paid like $5,000 for this. We thought that was so much money. $5,000 for a month, like that is so much. Oh my gosh. And then we find out it doesn't exist. And they're like, no problem, we can put you in a hotel room. And they put us in a hotel room for a week. And we were at like a party hotel. Okay, we're at a party hotel in the DR, and they're playing, do you remember that song Gangnam Style, where it's like whoop 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 Gangnam Style? Do you know what I'm talking about, that song? And it is non-stop playing. And Robbie and I were like, we have to get out of this place. Like, I don't even know, like, even if you were drinking, because we don't drink that much, and we weren't drinking at all during that time. Like, I don't know how you could listen to that even if you were drinking and that was enjoyable to you the whole time. And so we get out of that after a week. I think we ended up leaving a couple of days earlier because we were like, we cannot listen to this. We're building $1 million companies. And at that time, I wasn't even close to building $1 million company. I just hit my first 6 figures for the year. And we go to this penthouse in the DR, which is the house where I started the Freedom Queen podcast. And I remember every morning we would read this book. It was called You Have Nothing to Prove. And we would go out and swim in the ocean. And I had all of these Post-it notes on the wall. And in one of them, I'll never forget this, it said make $50,000 cash in a month. Because at the time I hadn't done that. The most I had done at that time was like in cash, like 17K cash, 20K cash. And that was like a reach. I'd done a lot in sales, but I was still working on bringing up a lot of my cash at the time. And I had a little Post-it note in yellow on the wall because I used to travel the world with those and like program the crap out of my mind. And I had this on the wall and it said, make $50,000 cash months. And oh, this is the craziest part. I forgot about this. So for Christmas that year, Robbie's sister had gotten him a podcast microphone. So like, this is how God works in your life. So Robbie's sister gets Robbie the podcast mic. We're in the Dominican Republic. We're now in this penthouse that looks over the ocean. Penthouse looks over the ocean. And Robbie, one evening, as the sun's setting, we're sitting in our kitchen at this like rickety wooden table. Everything's kind of mismatched. It's like, doesn't really look good. And Robbie's sitting there and says, I'm going to start a podcast. Because his sister got him the mic. I completely forgot about that piece. And I say, that sounds like fun. Me too. Robbie, my fiance, published one episode. One. I don't even know how many episodes I've published. I could look it up while we're live. Would you like me to look it up while we're live? Because I can do that. I can pull up some really incredible stats. So, I don't know if it tells me how many episodes I've done. Here we go. So Robbie uploaded one episode and then quit. Because I actually believe that Robbie was never meant to start a podcast in the first place. He was never meant to start a podcast. I believe that his sister gave him that microphone, and then he said that in that kitchen that day, and we had moved out of all of those places just so in that one moment, he could look at me and say, I'm gonna start a podcast, and I would say, that sounds like fun, me too. You might not even realize it, but there are things happening around you that for whatever reason, it might not seem like in the moment like it's a big deal, but it's gonna change your life forever. I didn't know in that moment when I remember we were sitting on the floor of my parents' house in Florida and the dogs were running around and we're on the carpet. This is in 2021. And Robbie opens up the gift and it's this beautiful podcast mic. I didn't know that in that moment that him getting that for whatever reason, his sister gave him the podcast mic was actually a message to me. And I also believe that there's one of you that's watching this live, watching the replay, whether it's live now or years from now, or you're listening to this on the Freedom Queen podcast. For whatever reason, you too are also meant to launch your own podcast, to get your voice out into the world in a much bigger way. And so let's see if I can look at some of these stats. So I've done 363 podcast episodes. Podcast downloads is all time 109,318. It is listened to the most in North America, then Europe. I would love to know where you're listening in from. Then Europe. And then, guess where the next one is? Asia. Who's in Asia? North America, Europe, Asia. Then Oceania is what this is described as. Then South America, and then Africa. Top listeners are USA, Canada, UK, Germany, Australia. Top cities are Melbourne. And our top, let's see if we can get by most popular. Okay, this is fascinating. So our most popular download, or most downloaded episodes are number one. Okay, this is another tip and strategy that you can use for your podcast. So this episode got 2,601 downloads, just this one episode. And that was because I sent traffic from a viral reel to the podcast. So this is also something that you can do very easily. Instead of sending people to like a ManyChat, to a masterclass, or to your email list, or to your Facebook group, send them to your podcast episodes to nurture them. So I sent people from a viral reel to this podcast episode. This one type of content made me $529,000 cash in 143 days. Let's see, how many? I just want to see something. Wow. Okay, this is actually really fascinating. So how many months is 143 days? So it's about 5 months-ish, which is fascinating because I am celebrating making $1 million cash in 4 months, which is insane. So you can send traffic from your Instagram or any sort of viral quick content to it. The next most downloaded one, which I think this is fascinating, is Podcast Listeners Only Challenge. Make April your biggest month. So I did that April of 2024, and then in May, I doubled my income and jumped to 200K cash months. So again, I ran a podcast challenge right before my, at that time, biggest month ever, and had a 200, I don't remember the exact amount. It was like 210, maybe a little bit more than that, cash month. So your podcast has so many capabilities. And one of the things that I want you to do is, number one, if you have a podcast already, I want you to consistently publish on your podcast. 2, run something like a podcast challenge once per quarter, once a month, to get your listeners more used to listening to you and to teach them to listen to you when you drop an episode. And then 3, send traffic from your short form content to your podcast, and that's gonna make a huge difference in terms of nurturing your audience. Okay, my queens, I see all of you are firing it up. So what we're gonna do, first of all, how are you feeling? Did that blow your mind? Yes, there's so many ways to leverage it. And then you bring guests on. I've had so many amazing guests. Next week, I'm going to have, to be flying out somewhere to have an amazing guest on the Freedom Queen podcast. Last week, we had Lori Harder on, Russell Brunson. Like I've had the most amazing humans come on the podcast, because when you do something amazing, it attracts other amazing human beings. And it's been like my secret weapon over the last couple of years. So what I want you to do is, number one, if you get value out of the Freedom Queen podcast, go to either Apple or Spotify and write us a review. Tell me about your experience with the Freedom Queen podcast. Once you do that, you're gonna see a thread. I'm literally going to post it. You know what, I'll just do it right now. I'm gonna post it right now so that you remember to do this. It's called Freedom Queen, Simple Scales, Complex Fails. Freedom Queen podcast giveaway. Comment a screenshot of your review below, of your review. Winner will be selected on Saturday. Okay, so on Saturday, Team Freedom Queen is gonna select the winner, and all you have to do is go to Apple or Spotify and write us an amazing review. Tell me how much you love the Freedom Queen podcast. It has to be genuine. You can write us a Google review. That also works as well. Screenshot it. Every single time you do this, you will get entered to win. And one amazing human being this Saturday is going to get these absolutely gorgeous new Freedom Queen merch mailed right to you. The one thing that I really love about these, besides that they're beautiful, and we have these custom cases that they come in with your name engraved in it, so it's very special. But I have been looking a lot for different merch for Freedom Queen, and something about these, it's different than a t-shirt, it's different than a sweatshirt, than shorts, and a water bottle. When you put these on, it's like you're entering into a new level of your life. One of my clients, she was going through something and she said, Bridge, I wanted you to know that when I wasn't feeling good, all I did was put on the Freedom Queen necklace and I felt powerful. And that's the power of building an incredible personal brand, is that when you build this brand that moves people, just touching the merchandise changes your life. And so when you get these glasses in the mail, what I want them to do is I want them to change you. As soon as you put them on, maybe you're going through something, maybe you just need to wake up in the morning and you need to feel more confident. As soon as you put them on, do you even see that shift? Just look at this. So here and here. The chain, it adds to everything. You could put these on with like a sweatsuit, sweatshirt, sweatpants, pajamas, and you put on this persona and this identity. And you can also take this like this and put it behind you. So let's say you're out, you're running errands and you have to put them down, then you can just put it around and then go back up and put it like this. It adds to so many outfits. And so one person's going to win it, and all you have to do is just write a review on either Spotify or Apple, and you will be entered to win. Jade says, as I'm wearing this shirt right now. What? The Freedom Queen white shirt, is that what you're talking about? Merch, and if you make merch for your people, merch is so special and it's so important that you're very intentional about it, because you want people, when they touch your merchandise, you want them to go through an identity shift. You want them to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm a completely new woman. And what's so cool about these glasses, actually, maybe I'll do that. what's so cool about these glasses is that they're like a beautiful accessory. You can, it's not like it says like Freedom Queen on that. Like they're just stunning. I'm obsessed with them. I get compliments on them all the time. And then the inside of them, they're like these golden, they look beautiful. It's almost like you know what it's like? It's like all of a sudden you've traveled back in time and you're in like an old cinematic movie because it's like the golden hour. You put them on, oh gosh, man, I feel high on life when I look out through these glasses. All the women in the Freedom Queen Mastermind get these, and when I was talking with them, they were like, life just feels dull when I look out through my own lives, but life through the Freedom Queen glasses, I feel amazing. So one person's going to be selected to win. As soon as you write a review, go ahead and comment it, screenshot it right on that thread, and maybe some of you have already done it, so make sure that you do it soon. And each time you do that, you're going to be entered to win. You're going to be entered to win the glasses. Yes, I had mine on the other day too. You step right back into the energy of Freedom Queen Live. When I wear it, touch it, I'm right back there. Wow. That is really powerful. I do have to say that the glasses though are like a money magnet. You wear these while you're flying, people are like, who is that? It levels up you in a way that I didn't know you could be leveled up through glasses and a chain. So my beautiful queen, we are celebrating 100,000 downloads. If you are an avid listener of the podcast, say hello in the comments because I don't know who's a listener. It's not like with Instagram or Facebook, like I can see who's commenting. With our podcast, I actually have no idea who listens to it. And so if you are a listener, send me a DM on Instagram and say hello. Just say, hey, Bridge, I listened to the podcast. I love it. Tell me. So that I know, because it's helpful for me when I am speaking into my voice memo or my Telegram app to record for you, then I know who's listening in. So if you have a podcast and you're wanting to use your voice and your essence and your influence to change the world even more, then I want you to double down on your podcast, your live streams, your Instagram lives, your Facebook lives. Like this is why I started doing live podcast recordings, because there's just something so special about them. So my beautiful Freedom Queen, I will see you inside of the Freedom Queen podcast. And as I always say in the Freedom Queen podcast, I'll talk to you on the next one. Okay. All right, Freedom Queen, I see Jasmine's a listener. Amazing. I love you. And I'll talk to you on the next one.